Buddhism, an ancient spiritual tradition originating in the Indian subcontinent over 2,500 years ago, and modern science, the cornerstone of contemporary understanding and technology, seem to stem from very different roots. One is often viewed as a religion based on faith and metaphysical doctrines, and the other as an empirical, objective, and rational approach to understanding reality. Despite their differing origins and worldviews, the question of compatibility between Buddhism and science has been the subject of growing interest, especially in the 21st century. Can a spiritual tradition like Buddhism coexist or even complement scientific inquiry? Or are the two ultimately irreconcilable due to foundational differences? This essay explores this question through multiple dimensions: foundational principles, methods of inquiry, views on consciousness and reality, ethical frameworks, historical and modern interactions, and philosophical critiques. It argues that while certain metaphysical aspects of Buddhism may conflict with the assumptions of scientific materialism, many aspects of Buddhist philosophy, particularly its emphasis on empirical observation, mindfulness, and psychological insight, align surprisingly well with the spirit of scientific investigation. In some areas, Buddhism and science can be seen not as oppositional but as complementary, offering different yet valuable perspectives on the nature of existence. Foundations of Buddhism and science. Core tenets of Buddhism. Buddhism, as taught by Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, revolves around a few central doctrines that provide the framework for understanding human suffering and the path to its cessation. These are the Four Noble Truths, the essence of the Buddha's teachings. They state that 1. Life is marked by suffering, dukkha. 2. Suffering is caused by craving, tanha. 3. The cessation of suffering, nirvana, is possible. And 4. There is a path, the Eightfold Path, that leads to this cessation. Anicca, impermanence. Everything in existence is in a constant state of change. Anatta, non-self. There is no permanent, unchanging self. The self is a collection of changing physical and mental constituents. Pratityasamutpada, dependent origination. All phenomena arise in dependence on conditions. Nothing exists independently. These principles encourage introspection, mindfulness, and direct experience. The Buddha often instructed his followers to not accept teachings blindly, but to examine them through their own experience and reasoning. Core principles of science. Modern science, built on empirical observation and methodological skepticism, seeks to understand the natural world through measurable, testable, and reproducible phenomena. Its core principles include empiricism. Knowledge comes primarily from sensory experience and experimentation. Falsifiability. Scientific theories must be testable and subject to potential refutation. Objectivity. Observations and results should be independent of individual bias. Reproducibility. Results must be replicable by others under similar conditions. Reductionism and materialism. Phenomena are understood by breaking them down into simpler components, usually physical and material in nature. Science excels at explaining the external world but often refrains from making claims about subjective experience or metaphysical realities, areas where Buddhism has traditionally focused. Methodologies of inquiry. First-person versus third-person inquiry. A significant difference between Buddhism and science lies in their methods of investigation. Science employs third-person methodologies, experiments, observation, and statistical analysis. Buddhism uses first-person inquiry through meditation, mindfulness, and introspection. Yet both seek to uncover truth based on evidence and direct experience. Meditation, central to Buddhist practice, can be seen as a rigorous method of mental observation. Practitioners train their attention to examine sensations, emotions, thoughts, and consciousness itself. The consistency of insights reported by meditators across cultures and centuries suggests a form of replicability. Similarly, science relies on external observations, but when studying consciousness, first-person data become increasingly relevant. Empirical spirit and skepticism. Despite methodological differences, both Buddhism and science emphasize skepticism and critical examination. The Buddha's instructions in the Kalama Sutta reflect this ethos. Do not believe something just because it is traditional, authoritative, or logical. Believe it only when it agrees with experience and promotes well-being. This empirical spirit in Buddhism mirrors scientific skepticism, where hypotheses must be tested and proven before being accepted. Both traditions value curiosity, investigation, and humility in the face of uncertainty. Consciousness and cognitive science. The nature of consciousness. One of the most intriguing intersections between Buddhism and science lies in the study of consciousness. Buddhism offers one of the most sophisticated analyses of mind and mental states, predating modern psychology by millennia. The mind in Buddhism is not a fixed entity but a process, a flow of moment-to-moment awareness. Modern neuroscience, while rooted in materialism, has increasingly turned to meditation as a tool for studying the brain. Techniques like functional MRI, fMRI, have shown that meditation alters brain activity in areas related to attention, emotional regulation, and empathy. Research by Richard Davidson and others on Tibetan monks has demonstrated neuroplasticity, or the brain's ability to change with practice, supporting the Buddhist claim that mental training transforms consciousness. Mindfulness and psychological applications. Mindfulness meditation, rooted in Buddhist practice, has been integrated into Western psychology. Programs like mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, MBCT, are now mainstream, used to treat conditions ranging from depression to chronic pain. These programs have been scientifically validated through randomized controlled trials and meta-analyses. While stripped of their religious and ethical contexts, they retain the core practice of mindful awareness. Critics argue this secularization dilutes the transformative potential of mindfulness, but its psychological benefits remain well documented. Metaphysical conflicts and reinterpretations. Rebirth and karma. A major area of incompatibility arises in metaphysical doctrines like rebirth and karma. Traditional Buddhism posits a cycle of birth and rebirth governed by karma, the moral consequences of one's actions. These ideas are difficult to reconcile with scientific materialism, which sees consciousness as a product of the brain and ends with death. Some contemporary Buddhists reinterpret these concepts symbolically. Rebirth can be seen as the continuation of psychological patterns or behaviors. Karma can be understood as the natural consequences of actions in this life rather than a metaphysical force. These reinterpretations make Buddhism more compatible with scientific worldviews but are controversial within traditional circles. Emptiness and quantum physics. Parallels are often drawn between Buddhist notions of emptiness, shunyata, and quantum physics. Both suggest that entities lack inherent, independent existence. In quantum theory, particles exist in probabilistic states until observed. In Buddhism, phenomena are interdependent and lack fixed essence. While intriguing, these comparisons are metaphorical at best. Quantum physics is a precise mathematical framework, while emptiness is an existential and phenomenological insight. Nonetheless, both challenge the naive realism that assumes a solid, unchanging world. Ethics and values. Scientific neutrality versus Buddhist morality. Science, as a descriptive enterprise, does not provide moral values. It tells us what is, not what ought to be. Buddhism, on the other hand, is deeply ethical. The Eightfold Path includes right speech, right action, and right livelihood, all aimed at reducing suffering. Buddhist ethics are consequentialist in nature, actions are judged based on their ability to reduce suffering and promote well-being. This aligns with utilitarian frameworks in philosophy and complements science by offering an ethical compass for technological and scientific developments. Environmental ethics. Buddhism's emphasis on interdependence and compassion extends to all living beings, fostering a strong ecological ethic. The belief that all life forms are interconnected aligns well with ecological science. Buddhist leaders like Thich Nhat Hanh and the Dalai Lama have advocated for environmental responsibility as a spiritual practice. Science can quantify the impact of human actions on the environment, but Buddhism can motivate ethical action through a sense of spiritual responsibility and interconnectedness. Historical and contemporary dialogue. Buddhism in the scientific age. The 19th and 20th centuries saw increasing encounters between Buddhism and science. Early Western scholars portrayed Buddhism as a rational, ethical philosophy devoid of superstition, making it more compatible with scientific rationalism than other religions. In the modern era, figures like the Dalai Lama have actively promoted dialogue between Buddhism and science. He has stated that if scientific evidence contradicts a Buddhist belief, then Buddhism should change. This openness contrasts with religious fundamentalism and facilitates meaningful engagement. The Mind and Life Institute. Founded in 1987, the Mind and Life Institute has been a major platform for dialogue between scientists and Buddhist scholars. Topics include consciousness, neuroplasticity, compassion, and contemplative practices. These dialogues have resulted in collaborative research, influencing fields like contemplative neuroscience. This institutional collaboration exemplifies how ancient spiritual traditions can engage constructively with modern scientific paradigms, enriching both. Critiques and limitations. Dangers of scientism and reductionism. Attempts to validate Buddhism through science can sometimes lead to reductionism, where complex spiritual experiences are reduced to neural activity. This undermines the depth and context of Buddhist practice. Scientism, the belief that science is the only valid way of knowing, can also be limiting. Buddhism emphasizes wisdom, prajna, gained through meditation and ethical living, which may not be quantifiable but is no less valid for personal transformation. Misinterpretations and popular culture. Popular attempts to link Buddhism with quantum physics or neuroscience often result in oversimplifications. Statements like Buddhism predicted quantum mechanics are misleading and lack scholarly rigor. Authentic dialogue requires nuance, respect for context, and awareness of the limitations of both traditions. Romanticizing Buddhism as a science of the mind risks distorting its cultural, ritual, and ethical dimensions. A middle path to integration. Complementarity over equivalence. Rather than seeking complete agreement, it may be more fruitful to view Buddhism and science as offering complementary perspectives. Science explains mechanisms, Buddhism explores meaning. Science addresses the external world, Buddhism investigates the inner world. This complementarity echoes the Buddhist middle way, avoiding extremes. Both traditions can coexist, each contributing to human understanding and well-being. Shared goals, understanding and reducing suffering. Ultimately, both Buddhism and science aim to understand reality and reduce suffering. Science does so by conquering disease, extending life, and explaining nature. Buddhism does so by transforming the mind, cultivating compassion, and fostering wisdom. Their shared goals make collaboration not only possible but desirable, especially in addressing global challenges like mental health, environmental degradation, and social inequality. So, the question of whether Buddhism is compatible with science is one that reveals profound insights not only about these two great traditions of thought but also about the human quest for understanding. As we have seen throughout this essay, both Buddhism and science strive to uncover truths about reality, albeit through different methods, assumptions, and frameworks. One is a spiritual path developed over millennia to address human suffering and the nature of consciousness. The other is a modern, systematic endeavor to investigate the external world through observation, experimentation, and reason. Despite their differences, these two approaches often find themselves converging in unexpected and meaningful ways. First and foremost, the compatibility between Buddhism and science lies in their shared commitment to empirical investigation. While science favors third-person methodologies, observable, measurable, and repeatable phenomena, Buddhism offers a first-person method rooted in introspection and meditation. Both traditions value direct experience over speculative metaphysics. The Buddha himself encouraged critical thinking, skepticism, and personal verification of truths rather than reliance on authority or blind belief. This aligns closely with the empirical spirit of science, which demands evidence, reproducibility, and testability. Such shared values have created fertile ground for dialogue, especially in fields like cognitive science, psychology, and neuroscience. The impact of Buddhist practices on scientific understanding of the mind has been one of the most compelling areas of convergence. Meditation, mindfulness, and other contemplative practices have not only entered the clinical and academic mainstream but have also transformed how we understand mental health, neuroplasticity, and emotional regulation. Scientific studies confirm that consistent meditative practice can lead to measurable changes in brain structure and function, supporting the Buddhist claim that the mind is malleable and trainable. These insights have been instrumental in developing therapeutic techniques that improve mental well-being for millions around the world. In addition to meditation, Buddhist ethical teachings also offer a strong complement to scientific endeavors. Science, being primarily descriptive, does not prescribe moral values or ethical behavior. This limitation can sometimes lead to the misuse of scientific knowledge, be it in environmental degradation, military technology, or genetic manipulation. Buddhism, on the other hand, provides a comprehensive ethical framework grounded in compassion, non-harming, and mindfulness. Its emphasis on interdependence and the reduction of suffering aligns well with contemporary global challenges, from ecological crises to social inequality. In this way, Buddhist ethics can serve as a moral compass for scientific progress, ensuring that technological advancements serve the well-being of all sentient beings. Nonetheless, the relationship is not without its tensions. Buddhism includes metaphysical elements, such as karma, rebirth, and realms of existence, that are difficult, if not impossible, to verify through scientific methods. These aspects often challenge the materialist assumptions of science, which posits that consciousness arises solely from physical processes and ceases at death. While some modern Buddhists interpret karma and rebirth metaphorically, others maintain these doctrines as literal truths. This divergence has led to debates within both communities about the proper interpretation of foundational beliefs and their role in a scientifically informed worldview. Yet even in these areas of divergence, there is potential for productive dialogue. Rather than dismissing religious metaphysics outright, science can approach them with humility and openness, recognizing that it may not yet possess the tools or frameworks to understand all aspects of consciousness and existence. Similarly, Buddhism can benefit from scientific scrutiny and discovery, refining its teachings and practices in light of new evidence. This mutual openness fosters a dynamic, evolving relationship rather than a static dichotomy. Furthermore, the philosophical parallels between Buddhist notions of interdependence and contemporary physics provide another intriguing area of exploration. Concepts like dependent origination and emptiness resonate with certain interpretations of quantum mechanics and systems theory, which also reject the idea of isolated, independently existing entities. While caution must be exercised to avoid superficial comparisons, these parallels suggest that both traditions are moving toward a more holistic, relational understanding of reality, one that transcends the limitations of dualistic thinking. On a broader level, the convergence of Buddhism and science reflects a deeper cultural and intellectual transformation. In an age marked by information overload, mental stress, and existential uncertainty, people are increasingly seeking integrative frameworks that address both the external and internal dimensions of life. Science offers precision, innovation, and technological mastery. Buddhism offers wisdom, inner peace, and ethical clarity. Together, they form a powerful synthesis capable of addressing the full spectrum of human experience. This synthesis is not merely theoretical. Institutions like the Mind and Life Institute, collaborations between the Dalai Lama and leading scientists, and research centers dedicated to contemplative neuroscience demonstrate how this integration is already unfolding in practice. These initiatives are producing new forms of knowledge, education, and healing that draw upon the best of both worlds. They exemplify how ancient wisdom and modern science can enrich one another without compromising their core principles. In educational settings, the incorporation of mindfulness practices into school curricula has shown promise in improving students' attention, emotional resilience, and overall well-being. In healthcare, mindfulness-based interventions are increasingly recognized as effective tools for managing chronic pain, anxiety, and depression. In business and leadership, Buddhist-inspired approaches to mindfulness and compassion are transforming organizational cultures and promoting more humane forms of decision-making. These practical applications illustrate that the convergence of Buddhism and science is not only intellectually stimulating but also socially impactful. At the same time, both Buddhism and science face internal challenges that could affect their ability to engage constructively. Science must remain vigilant against the excesses of scientism, the belief that science is the sole arbiter of truth, and be open to qualitative and subjective dimensions of experience. Buddhism must guard against dogmatism and cultural insularity, remaining true to its empirical roots while adapting to new contexts. Only through mutual humility and critical engagement can the dialogue between these traditions flourish. In conclusion, the compatibility of Buddhism and science lies not in their sameness but in their complementary strengths. Where science excels in explaining mechanisms and developing technologies, Buddhism offers insights into meaning, ethics, and the cultivation of inner well-being. Together, they form a more complete approach to understanding the human condition and addressing the urgent challenges of our time. Their dialogue is not merely an academic exercise but a necessary endeavor in the search for wisdom, balance, and compassion in a rapidly changing world. Rather than asking whether Buddhism and science are compatible in the absolute sense, we might ask how they can cooperate to deepen our understanding of reality and improve the human condition. When approached with respect, curiosity, and a shared commitment to truth and well-being, these two traditions can become powerful allies in the quest for knowledge, harmony, and liberation. In an era that increasingly demands integrated thinking and holistic solutions, the convergence of Buddhism and science may well represent one of the most promising frontiers of human inquiry.